Welcome to our RegTech Edge No Borders event on regulatory compliance solutions. In the spirit of reconciliation, the RegTech Association acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Since 2020, we have had over 19,000 people from more than 85 countries attend our programs. For this particular event, we have had 213 registrations from 25 countries, 43 regulated institutions, 25 government or regulators, 7 investment and 56 RegTechs. So I wish to thank you for making the time to join us today, wherever you are joining us from. Just a bit of housekeeping. Today will be recorded and every registered delegate will receive the link. Cameras and mics off unless you are presenting, thank you. And all questions in the chat, please. And don't be shy. I'll ask our presenters to jump directly onto the chat to answer the questions after they've presented. There will be some polls and some questions put in the chat, and I'd encourage you to get involved, comment and enable the presenters to be on their game. To our presenters, I'd like to respectfully ask you to not go over your 5 minutes so that everyone gets an equal opportunity. Thank you. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Tim Phillips from RegVisory, who will provide us with a quick overview on the current landscape in the regulatory compliance space. Tim is a co-founder of RegVisory, an advisory organisation that assists in accelerating the adoption of RegTech solutions by unlocking RegTech's potential for founders, buyers and funders. He's an experienced financial crime, data analytics and RegTech specialist with a demonstrated history of working in the management consultancy industry at a global level. Prior to his current role, he was a former global leader of 2 businesses for Deloitte between 2000 and 2021. He was based initially in Australia and then Singapore. He also served as the inaugural global leader of Deloitte Analytics for 5 years, growing the business to 10,000 plus people and 4 billion in revenue. Tim was also a former regulator and director of enforcement with the Australian Securities and Investments Commission between 1990 and 2000. And last but not least, he's also on our RegTech Association Advisory Committee. As I said, Tim is going to open our session today and provide us with his perspective on the topic of regulatory compliance. Over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Great to be here as always. I'm usually a participant in these, so it's interesting to be on the other side on this occasion. It's a really interesting time. It's a really thrilling time to be part of the RegTech movement, actually. I've said this before, but there's a real shift occurring across the globe, a real focus coming down the RegTech space. Many of the funders have looked at fintech more often in the past, but that shift is really starting to occur largely because it's an exciting space. There's a lot of regulatory change occurring, and the valuations are a lot better in the RegTech space than they are in fintech. Interestingly, and many of you probably saw this, there's some information that came out of Europe in the last couple of days suggesting that RegTech funding's had its best quarter in history in this last quarter. Something in the order of, if I get the numbers right, 19 deals worth about $27 million US. So, not enormous numbers. They're not in the the 100 million multiples and those sort of things, but they're still going strong. About 40% of that coming out of the UK. So it's a really good sign. And my experience is that funders in this part of the world, in Asia Pacific, there are still a good level of funding. The valuations are down, so it costs a lot more to get money in that space. But they're interested in great ideas in the RegTech area. They look for good IP, particularly anything that involves AI. Although frankly, most of them don't understand what that really means. But they're moving on the trend. And they look for a good growth prospect. So if you've got validation from a strong customer base already, good annual run rate, good ARR, or you've got, real interest in the product, then you'll probably find funders who are going to be interested. Won't be huge numbers, and it'll be scalable, but they're strong. I spent the last couple of days at the ACAMS meeting in Sydney, and a number of you were probably there, I imagine. That was really interesting because the level of conversation about tranche two FAR, as some would call it, was really quite pervasive. Essentially, most of the regulators and Attorney General's Department people were talking about it as when it begins, as distinct from if it begins. So I think there's a lot of promise coming there, and I say that because tranche two will be an enormous bonus for RegTech. There are lots of opportunities in that space around identification, enhanced due diligence, trust deed management, all sorts of interesting areas, and a lot of conversation about fraud and scam proposition two. So I think the future looks bright for RegTechs in this part of the world, and equally good opportunities for expansion across the globe. I think I'll leave it there, Alison, and my suggestion is we should move pretty quickly to hear from our presenters, who I'm sure is one of the key reasons why we're here. So Hong, perhaps we can introduce Manoj at this point from Apply ID, some really interesting biometric onboarding platforms. So Manoj, over to you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, and welcome everybody. Next. Right, just a little bit about us as a business at Apply ID. So we've been founded in New Zealand back in 2018, and we've grown in the world of digital onboarding and biometric solutions, and extended our footprint into Australia and UK over the last 5 to 6 years. Next. So today, guys, it's very simple. What Apply ID's done is we've built a simple, everyday and seamless language that helps everyday people in society prove who they are, especially when they're going through KYC AML arrangements. And we've wrapped that into a real simple, safe and secure AML platform that helps companies verify their customers in a matter of seconds. So today I'll give you a quick lens on what that SaaS version of our software looks like, speed to market, plug and play, and giving any business that wants to get into this capacity at speed at their fingertips a solution that can actually give them what they need very quickly. Next. So just to kick off a little bit about that front-end KYC onboarding journey that I spoke to you about earlier, very simple user experience in terms of keeping it zero barrier to entry, but also keeping it frictionless. So the aim of the game here is to get the most amount of data possible about the individual who's looking to KYC themselves with the least amount of clicks possible, which you'll see here as, kicking off in the address data capture. We've worked really hard on making sure the experience is great and user friendly. So here you'll see a little bit of animation that's allowing that individual to take a picture of their driver's license or passport, depending on what it is. And what we've done is we've also templated and designed and ensured that there's over 17,000 different international ID documents that are compatible. So the legacy versions, any new versions that are being adopted by various governments on a global scale are automatically added. So in this use case with the New Zealand version, it's prompting the individual to take a picture of the back because of the fact that the expiry date is on the back, which is common in many states and cities across Australia. What we're also leaning on as part of the next pillar is extracting that OCR, the data via OCR data extraction, and then pasting the data into an online form. So ensuring that the service provides the highest level of data integrity possible. And the last part is the short selfie verification. So again, using the biometrics, taking that customer through a real basic prompt of positioning their face within the frame, getting them to give a big smile, and then that's pretty much it. So that KYC process, market feedback's around 60 seconds, and in 60 seconds time, we believe that our digital construct can prove that person's individual credentials in terms of who they are. Next. So this part is pretty much more around the data that's being registered and the origination about that person, proving that that person is that person. So we've got various sort of components and checks in place that make sure and gives the company or the reporting entity confidence that that person is there. So starting off with name, date of birth and address, ensuring that they exist in the ecosystem in New Zealand through government trusted data sources. We have the biometrics layer, face match and liveness. So again, making sure that they are who they say they are, and then tampering, making sure that whether there's any fraud or any manipulation on the ID document. Next. The last part is the reporting component. So we are a platform and a company that take action and not storing data. We're purely a mechanism to get your customers from A to B. So what we do give you the ability to do is extract the PDF report from our system. And the moment you do that, that data is deleted from our servers 1 hour from that point onwards. So again, through our open APIs, the service is available also with PDF reports and the JSON payload as well in terms of the raw data. But in short, you can then upload that PDF report into your CRM of choice and then getting ready for the next audit to ensure that it meets the necessary KYC AML requirements. Next. So just a use case, guys, for the people on the call, one of our clients is Convera in the fintech space, the financial services space. They came to us with a cumbersome manual paper-based approach in terms of them onboarding customers. Once they endorsed and embraced the Apply ID, it was perfectly able to give them a digital onboarding solution and process, but more importantly, improve the amount of accounts that they could take on board as well, reduces substantial drop-off. So having the ability to provide a conversion metric was really powerful for a business of that stature. Next, just touching on what was initially said earlier, this gives you a little bit of a diversity and a vast array of verticals that we play in. So legal, accounting, real estate being topical in tranche 2 is key for us, but also in finance as well, banking and financial services is a big one too. And next, and this is just the final slide, guys. If anyone wants to extend the conversation beyond the 5-minute preso, feel free to give me a call or email me anytime to take this further. Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj. That was excellent and right on time. You've set the tone. Well done. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to Karen Stevens now from Be Cyber. And Karen, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Karen. I'm co-founder and CEO of the cyber risk mitigation group, Be Cyber. Our mission is to revolutionise cyber risk management in the SME market and in particular financial services. We speak the language of business, we understand cybersecurity, and we make cybersecurity understandable and obtainable for the SME. But before we get into it, let's understand the world in which we find ourselves. Next. These are just some of the breaches that have occurred in recent days. And by recent, I mean since the 8th of May. If you go to the top left where you've got Ebsworth, anything with a red around it has a link to that one breach. So you can see what has happened over the recent days. The most interesting one is probably the Office of Australian Information Commissioner. They're the guys that you have to report your notifiable data breaches to. So everyone is affected, doesn't matter how big, doesn't matter how small. And I've just included Medibank again, poor things. They seem to be copying it quite badly in recent times. But interestingly, the theme for all of these is third-party risk. Next. It's been quite interesting in financial services in particular. This year is the first time we've actually seen a group be taken to court successfully over a cybersecurity conduct breach under the Corps Act. Essentially what happened is a brute force attack occurred with RI advice. The bad guys were in off and on for almost 6 years, sorry, I don't want to exaggerate, and around 155 hours. The directions we've been given is do all things necessary, which is not much of a direction, but it's what we've got. We need to remember that in the SME market, 99.8% of enterprises are SMEs in the Australian market, and they account for more than 7.6 million people. And traditionally, they've been ignored or left behind in the cybersecurity arena. They're unable to afford the measures or the staff or even to go to the big consulting firms. But they're the gatekeepers of PII, personally identifiable information, and that's where Be Cyber comes in. Next. As I said, we speak the language of business and understand cybersecurity. We are making cybersecurity understandable, obtainable, and affordable for the SME. And this is how. Next. GRACE, our governance, risk management, assurance, compliance and education program on its very own secure portal. The choice of tailored or pre-built programs. With GRACE, SMEs can for the first time establish a robust, comprehensive risk management program for a reasonable cost, protecting their intellectual property and their clients' sensitive or PII data, strengthening their cyber resilience, improving business continuity capabilities, and most importantly, improving the bottom line so that the individual business actually becomes that little bit more profitable and a little bit more saleable should you go down that way. It's all in one easy to use portal with modules and content created from day one. GRACE makes the complex simple. So if you're trying to get some cyber insurance, get yourself ready for ISO, a government contract, or for the regulators to visit, and you don't have policies, advanced cybersecurity software, staff training programs, personalized continuity, contingency, or even incident response plans, you need GRACE. But you're not sure where to start? So let's make it simple. Step one is where you undergo our GRACE Jumpstart assessment piece. After all, how do you know what to do and how to do it unless you know where you are today? Next. And this is what we've been up to. But the most important thing about this is we've been around since 2018 and we've been trialing and upgrading GRACE the whole time. Our focus is obviously on our clients' cybersecurity risk management, but really we like to keep GRACE working and ahead of the pack. Next. So, are you ready for when and not if you get breached? Next. Our recommendation is you start doing something today. Hope is not a strategy that you need with cybersecurity. So let's find out where your line in the sand is and take the first step in your cyber risk mitigation journey with BeCyber. Remember, BeCyber, be cyber safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. That was also very timely, so much appreciated. Okay, let's keep moving forward. We're whipping through at a great rate, which is good news. Craig Doran from Contract, looking forward to hearing about your platform. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm going to start a timer here because I'm really bad at keeping within time, so I'm going to keep myself in check. Yeah, so give it like a bit of background. So I've about 22 years in the Queensland Police Service. Try to get a platform off there, would build our briefs of evidence as we went along instead of being offline for building them for weeks and months. Thankfully didn't get off the ground, and I went on to build our software company. So we've so basically we've got over 70 Commonwealth, state government and private sector clients that are using our product now. And that includes more recently some banks that have come on board. We've got a massive rapid expansion about our product, and I'll talk to it very shortly. And like we're onboarding up to about 4 government agencies almost every month. The main reason for that is because we are, in its true essence, a COTS product, commercial off the shelf, which can be configured, and then generally our onboarding process is no more than 10 days, and we'll talk about that in a second. Next. So to give you an idea what we do, so what Contract is, we found a space in the government sector in particular, and more recently the financial sectors, where the briefs of evidence or investigation reports, we found people are offline for weeks and months at a time trying to put these together. So we create a platform that automatically creates that brief of evidence or that investigation report as they progress through the investigation. So the reason that they do that, we have some very 3 simple steps that actually allows that to occur. And we're going to have a quick look at what those 3 steps are and sort of talk to that as we sort of progress through these slides. I think the important thing to understand is, like originally when I guess I left the police to form this company, I had this vision, it was just for police, and then we merged into government sectors. We got a very big presence in environmental and regulators, health, work health and safety, racing integrity, you name it. We're across the board, across most Commonwealth and state government agencies. But now we've been taken on by a couple of the banks as well for running their anti-money laundering investigations and even internal code of conduct. So I'm just going to talk about the 3 steps which are key for users actually using our product. It was designed to be simple and intuitive, because coming from police, I realized that if you put some complex piece of software in place, they'll expend more energy into working out how to avoid using it than actually using it. So we've designed it to be very simple. So I'm going to talk about these 3 simple steps of what we call elementizing evidence as we over the next few slides. So next. So the first start of the process is every time the investigator does investigate activity, they simply record a summary of what that investigate activity was in the running sheet. Next. And then if they take possession of any files or documents or video, whatever the case may be, they simply import that into our platform, either straight from their desktop computer or laptop, or we also integrate with multiple other record management systems. And they just import those into the exhibit register. Next. And then the third step of elementizing evidence, which is really the heart and soul of Comtrack, is that the investigator will simply drag and drop that exhibit they took possession of and describe what is the evidence in that exhibit that goes towards proving a particular element of a breach or offence that's subject to their investigation. So what it does is the investigator then continually goes through those 3 steps of recording the investigative activity, importing any exhibits they take possession of, and mapping the evidence to those elements of the offence under legislation or a breach of a code of conduct. And then Comtrack is automatically building that brief of evidence in the background as they progress. Next. So what happens then is when they're ready to export that brief, all they do is they simply select the scope of the desired brief, which is simply, okay, who is this brief of evidence or the investigation report about, and which of the allegations or breaches of code of conduct does it relate to. Then Comtrack will automatically build a PDF, a fully indexed PDF document for printing, or a HTML version, like a digital platform they can use for running those presentations. And it's all done quite automatically at the click of a button. Next. So what we found is some of the feedback from our clients, as I mentioned earlier, we're getting 35 to 40% increase in efficiency. And some of the feedback we've got, if you look at it, the opportunity cost of failing to innovate through something like a digital brief evidence and elementizing evidence is like for 10 investigators, there's about 5,000 hours saved, worth about $300,000. Up to 1,000 investigators for a bigger agency, it's worth about $29.1 million in saved wages on the efficiency. Next. Okay, so that's probably it. I'm 9 seconds over my time as expected. So if you want to find out more, feel free just to scan that image, or otherwise, I believe these slides are going to be shared with everyone, which will have our contact details in as well. Thanks.
That's great, Craig. Thank you. Very comprehensive, and actually you're stuck pretty close to time, so I don't think you should be too hard on yourself. Okay, let's move to John O'Keefe with Know Your Distributor. KYD, I imagine, is the phrase.
That's it. Thanks, Tim, and thanks to the RegTech Association for this opportunity to present our KYD solution and an update on adoption in the Australian market. And thank you to all you lovely people for spending your valuable time listening to me. So we say distributor oversold. Well, distributor oversold or sold even. What does that actually mean? Next slide, please. Well, what are we solving for? We need to step back a bit to answer this question. Most of you be aware that ASIC introduced design and distribution obligations for issuers and distributors of financial products in October 2021. And you'll likely be familiar with some of the new obligations through advertising you hear on radio or you see on TV, which you now get encouraged to read a TMD in addition to a PDS for a financial product. And this TMD is a part of this DDO regime, so it's a new obligation under that regime. At its core, the new regulations, which mirror similar regimes in the UK and Europe, is intended to ensure that products are designed to meet actual customer needs and distributed to reach their intended target market. So you think of some of the worst examples coming out of the Hayne Royal Commission, so credit card insurance products, which people couldn't claim on, funeral bonds. The intention of DDO is to help to mitigate some of the risks around these dodgy products, for want of a better term. As you would expect with this new regime, there are a whole host of new obligations on product issuers and distributors to achieve compliance. And this includes producing, as I said, a TMD to go along with the product, having adequate product governance arrangements in place, and taking reasonable steps to ensure that your product is distributed in line with the target market. And there are also ancillary obligations around training and record keeping, as you would expect. Now, this all sounds really exciting. Yep, you're correct. Next slide, please. So we support product issuers and distributors in meeting the requirement to have reasonable steps in place to ensure that distribution occurs in line with target market. So we are solving for one kind of piece of the puzzle under the DDO regime. Next slide, please. And how do we do this? Well, we do this through the exchange of meaningful due diligence information in line with the requirements set out in the regulatory guidance. And ASIC's recent report on DDO compliance, have a read of that if you haven't already. The KYD solution facilitates a one-to-many relationship between issuers and distributors to exchange this information, saving time, money, and effort on both sides of the equation. We incorporate the industry standard FSC questionnaire and our own market-leading counterparty due diligence questions to ensure that issuers get a good oversight of distributors' resources, controls, conduct, and experience. Next slide, please. Importantly, what does the questionnaire cover? It is all the important stuff and the exciting stuff: company information and ownership, regulatory status, product governance arrangements, distribution and sales practices, governance, risk, compliance and assurance, training, and business continuity. Next slide, please. And KYD is an Australian version of an already existing and deployed RegTech solution in Europe, meeting a similar requirement under the regime in Europe. And everybody knows that an Australian version is obviously better than the original. So our key message here is that KYD isn't going anywhere. It's a well-established and well-supported solution. And our goal in Australia is to be the market infrastructure for the exchange of due diligence information between issuers and distributors of financial products. Next slide, please. What does it look like for distributors? Next slide. Well, number one, it's free to use. So that's pretty compelling. And aside from this, the key advantage is the one-to-many relationship. So if you're a distributor, you complete your information once in the system, and then you permission that out to all the issuers you would like to have access to that. The solution is SaaS-based. It's quick and easy to deploy. It saves time, it saves money, and it saves the hassle. Next slide. For the product issuer, what does that mean? Next slide. We are essentially competing with people doing the activity manually, and we all know how we feel about manual processes. So this saves an extraordinary amount of time and effort. Up to 80% is what we've shown from our research. Next slide. In addition to those benefit, the kind of time-saving benefit for product issuers, it is a systemized solution for this. But it is also supported by our team at KYD. So we do all the legwork. We chase up the distributors, we organize the information, while you can do the wining and dining with your clients, obviously in accordance with the regulatory requirements around wining and dining. But there's no more emails, there's no more PDFs, no more spreadsheets. There's one central record to exchange this information. There's excellent reporting in the tool, excellent data analytics. You can use that to wire your governance forums. And there's ability to risk rate data coming back so you can focus your attention on what matters. And most important, you meet your compliance obligations with DDO. Next slide. We've been offering KYD in Australia for roughly 12 months, and we've had a good level of uptake both on the issuer side and the distributor side, which is really pleasing. But the pace of client acquisition is increasing for us, so good news, tick. As these regulations are new, we are spending time still educating our addressable market on the obligations and how KYD can help support compliance. Now, I could speak about this all day, but I recognize I'm up against it from a time perspective. But you can connect with us using some of the details here or find us online. KYD, or Know Your Distributor.
That's great, John. Thank you so much. Very timely. Much appreciated. Okay, I think we're ready for Chile Lai now from Leap Expert. So over to you.
Thanks, Tim, and good to see you again. And thank you to the RegTech Association. I'm here to discuss responsible business communication. Next, please. So communication has permanently evolved. No longer fax, phone, and email is the most popular form of communication. It's instant messaging. Across all the different messaging apps, there are over 6.5 billion active users on there. But for businesses, this presents a unique challenge. First of all, the conversations are invisible, typically held on personal accounts or private numbers, not accessible to the business, which leads obviously to compliance issues for record keeping, for the ability to supervise, investor protection, and potential mis-selling happening on these messaging apps. And of course, data privacy, data governance. Do you have consent to capture these conversations? Where is that data being stored? Who has access to it? How long do you store it for? But ultimately, it's about the employee and client experience. The employee and clients want to message each other. Easiest, most responsive way to communicate. but most businesses, particularly the highly regulated ones, particularly banks and financial services, they don't allow this. Next, please. Now, some of the challenges are significant. Starting off from the US, right in the middle in red, there's been over $2.1 billion fined by the US regulators against many financial services, primarily banks, but also other dealers and brokers for failure to keep any records of these messaging apps, and particularly WhatsApp and text messages. And only recently, the last few months, in the top left, we see more fines. Another UK bank, another Canadian headquartered bank, again fined for lack of record keeping and supervision on these unapproved communication channels, WhatsApp and so forth. And even the UK regulator issued its first censure, mentioning WhatsApp as a key failure for no record keeping or retention. Now, if you look at Australia itself, in the middle left, you see the amount of scams, 3.1 billion last year recorded, an 80% increase year on year. Of those recorded, 239,000 scams were reported, with text message being the most common contact. So protecting investors is a key concern for a lot of financial services across messaging. Next, please. So our approach as the Leap Experts communication platform is to have a single interface for employees. You see from the top left, you can use our own application, whether it's on mobile or desktop or web browser, but also Microsoft Teams to allow one application, one tool to communicate with all the messaging apps that are used by customers, counterparties, and external parties. But critically, everything goes through the platform and is recorded, stored, and audited in their archiving systems, surveillance and monitoring systems. And of course, we integrate with many particular business workflows and systems. We also apply data leakage protection, so people are not saying things that they shouldn't be saying or not sending files through the platform to all these messaging apps, as well as anti-malware, antivirus. So any malicious links or malicious files are stopped at source and not received by the business. Next, please. So a recent case study we did with a Swiss headquartered global bank, their clients were demanding from their relationship managers to use WhatsApp and WeChat. Of course, strong demand across Asia Pacific, as well as all their other locations. Chat apps weren't approved. No WhatsApp was available, no WeChat was available, no ability to control or capture these messages. So clients were forced back to email, contact center, live chat, or the video meetings that we're having. Now, after a long process with this bank, they started an initial pilot in 2020, which was very successful at their headquarters. And since then, we've expanded to all their offices across all their countries and territories. So now over live service with over 12,000 employees and all divisions of that bank. But critically, the value we see, of course, is the client experience and engagement, the improved productivity of the employees, the ability to reach out, get responses, remind clients, all on messaging apps. Of course, record keeping, but uncovering the critical insights. These are real-time daily conversations your business is having with clients, now being captured, monitored, and stored. Next, please. So why Leap Expert? Established in 2017, we've been well funded with our last round earlier this year, led by Rockefeller, as well as a tier 1 US bank, who's also our global client, as well as the city of New York, who's invested in us as well. Our headquarters is in New York, but we have a strong presence across Asia, and primarily most of our customers are top tier banks. We have major partnerships, obviously with Microsoft and surveillance providers, as well as many awards, including Microsoft ISV Partner of the Year, as well as regulator recognition, winning the Hong Kong Monetary Authority's award. So for more details to discuss, please feel free to reach out. Thanks, Tim.
That's great, Julie. Much appreciated. Okay, let's keep moving on. We're making great time. Lexus Nexus, Michael Nelson. Michael, over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Nelson. I'm the Senior Product Specialist with the Lexus Nexus Regulatory Compliance Solution. For those who aren't aware of who Lexus Nexus is, we've been around for the best part of the last 200 years, providing guidance to predominantly people who work in the legal profession. Next, please. About 7 years ago in Australia, we realised that the kind of people who were really good at providing guidance to the legal profession when it came to case law and legislation would also be very good at providing that similar sort of guidance in relation to legislation, regulation, prudential standards and so on for people who work in the compliance sphere. One of the key issues, of course, to people who work in compliance is the huge amount of reg change that's flowing out of the nation's parliaments and the nation's regulators. This, in case you're wondering why you're feeling overloaded when it comes to reg change, gives you a snapshot of the legislative changes that took place in each of the various jurisdictions in Australia. So potentially, depending on the kind of work you and your organisation engage in, will potentially face somewhere in the order of 4,000 changes over the course of any given year for you to pass through and determine whether or not those changes affect you, the extent to which they affect you, and what you're going to do about it. Next slide, please. So traditionally, there have been some methods that organisations have employed on how to get clear oversight over what their legal obligations are and how they can begin to implement those. Subscribing to peak body emails, attending peak body events, subscribing to law firms' emails, attending webinars like today, joining professional associations, and generally trying to keep on top of the huge amount of reg change that's coming out of not just Australia, but also to the extent that your organisation touches on Europe, for example. There are obligations flowing out of there that very well might touch you in terms of things like GDPR, CSDDD, for example, and likewise other jurisdictions as well. So the key issue that people face is there are so many different data streams written in so many different voices, appealing to so many different audiences. It's really hard to maintain a general sense of what's happening and how it's going to affect you. But even if you were to get across that, then there's the opportunity on how you're going to share that with a broader organisation. Do you capture that in an Excel register? Do you simply forward the correspondence that you get out to the relevant business units so that they're across it? And of course, the final piece in the puzzle is how you demonstrate compliance, because it's all very well and good to be across what you need to know, but when internal audit or regulators come and ask you to demonstrate that you're compliant with the various aspects that your organisation has to deal with, that's another thing to consider. So one good solution is the Lexus Nexus Regulatory Compliance Solution. Next slide, please. Relying on the benefit of the relationships that we have with the legal profession, not just in Australia, but in a number of other jurisdictions as well. What we've done is create around 120 modules in Australia and almost 40 globally, each of which tackle particular aspects of obligations that might affect your organisation. We've got a set of core modules that talk to the kind of obligations, work health and safety, privacy and data protection, tax and so on, that are generally appropriate to any sort of corporate entity. Those are then refined and available for organisations that work in particular industry areas, such as banking or other financial services. We write the content in plain English. We provide the content through a variety of different technology options, including content that we provide natively, all of which should give you comfort, not just in relation to the obligation registers we offer, but the alerting solution that keeps you up to speed as reg change takes effect, and you can tie it back to the obligation registers that we provide. Next slide, please. To give you some sense of how we help organisations stay across what they're doing, this gives you one insight into Aussie Broadband and the fact that they've saved a significant amount of time and money and effort in relying on our obligations rather than them having to do it themselves. Next slide, please. If you'd like more information in relation to what the service is that we offer, please feel free when you get a copy of this deck to click on any of the links, and hopefully that will give you some greater insight. Next slide, please. And failing that, please feel free to contact me directly. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Once again, great, Michael. You've stayed, I think, almost within seconds of the time. So that's excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, last but not least, Mark Evans from Product Cloud. Mark, all yours.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks to the RegTech Association, and particularly thanks to everyone who's turned up today. So, I'm Mark Evans. I'm co-founder and CEO of Product Cloud. Product Cloud's a SaaS-based product information management platform designed for and by product managers to effectively manage their portfolio of current, proposed, grandfathered, third-party products and all the life cycle processes that entail managing a portfolio. Next, please. So we were founded in 2019. We were built by our sister company, Red Crew, who was a product development company that builds products for large Australian corporates and fintechs and regtechs. This company we stood up as a separate entity in 2021, and with the focus of supporting our financial services companies with their consumer data right and DDO obligations. We have extensive experience in financial services from a management consulting practice that we run alongside this company. Our focus remains on the CDR expansion in Australia as it rolls out to the non-bank lenders, the insurance superannuation, but we are exploring other open banking opportunities as open banking rolls out across other jurisdictions, particularly New Zealand and Canada, and we've started a number of productive discussions with partners in those areas. Recently, we were a finalist in the Australian FinTech Finnies Award for Best RegTech and Best Open Banking Startup. And previously we were a finalist in the Open Banking UK Open Banking Expo. Next, please. So our basic premise is that product managers were doing it tough, and it's just getting tougher. And why is that? It's the increasing compliance obligations of CDR and DDO, and making sure that their products are not misrepresented through the multiple channels that they have, and the DDO, that the target market determinations, they're not mis-selling to customers, or their distributors not selling to customers that they shouldn't be. The market velocity, the amount of product rationalisation, the M&A activity, just the constant rate changes that are happening. Even today, there are over 370 changes with 20 banks making those, and that's a pretty standard day. Real-time market intelligence. Well, the executive teams want to know what's happening with the cohort of competitors or banks that product managers need to follow, other than their own products. Can be a tedious exercise. I mentioned the fragmenting channels, with mobile apps, websites, the comparator sites, and other areas or forms that need to consume that product data is growing, and to maintain that consistency can be a major manual effort. And then there's always the risk of an audit and the ability to do that effectively. When historically it meant trawling through emails, shared folders, minutes of meetings to meet the audit requirements of whatever it is that's being asked about product decisioning from the past. So Product Cloud supports the product managers really by giving them more time back in the day, so they can be more strategic in this increasingly difficult environment. Next, please. So the four key areas or functionality of Product Cloud: it's a product repository, the system integration, product governance, and market analytics. The product repository is, as it says, it's the pane of glass that a product manager uses in a financial service company to view and manage the products from creation through to deployment, through their life cycle. We can create fact sheets and monitor all the changes that happen to products during their life cycle. System integration. I've mentioned the CDR and the requirements of product reference data to serve up APIs with product reference data to go and meet the obligations of open banking. DDO integration, we heard earlier about the importance of that and target market determinations, and a mix of internal and external APIs. Product governance, the workflow, the triggers, the scheduled reviews, the audit trail and history, and then importantly the market analytics. Just as we host the product reference data for our customers, we have access to the 10,000 products that are currently in the market and the 155 banks. So we can have push notifications to our product managers, who can then report on that, compare their products to the market. Next, please. This is the ecosystem that Product Cloud operates in. As you can see, we push data externally, we consume data in product information data internally. We have quarterly product user group meetings where we're constantly seeking out new use cases to build out this Product Cloud ecosystem to help our product managed customers. I'll skip through that one. And so please reach out in the time available. I've been able to skate through what I've wanted to say, so please reach out there or approach us if you want a demonstration. We can have your data loaded. We download it from the open banking regime. We can have your data loaded overnight and set you up for a trial. But thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. And thanks to all the presenters for being concise and to the point. Very easy to understand from all of them. Really appreciate that. And my thanks also to the association again. I think this is just a fantastic thing. I join almost all of these events because you learn so much about what people are doing, and it's inspiring to watch all these great ideas come to life. So thank you, Alison. As I hand back to you, congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you to all our other speakers as well. I'd like to echo Tim's thoughts in that it's such a great event that we run here, and we always get such great feedback from attendees. And so thank you to everyone who's joined us as well. We are going to finish a bit early, and so we will give you 10 minutes back in your day. So I'm sure you will be loving us for that. But I wanted to tell you about some events that are coming up next. On the 20th of July, we have our next RegTech Edge No Borders, which is on data protection, domain risk, process risk, and information security solutions. And then the week after that, on the 27th of July, we have our Edge on financial crime, AML, CTF, sanctions, and fraud solutions. So thank you again for everyone presenting and for coming today. You will receive the recording in the next day or so, and we hope you to see many of you online again soon, and take care until then. Thanks, everyone.